Welcome back. It's the Watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the second guest of the day. I am now joined by the Deputy Spokesperson of the All Progressives Congress APC Presidential Campaign Council, Hannatu Musawa. Thank you very much for joining us, madam.
Thank you so much, Ms. Olajumoke, for having me tonight.
All right. Now, you're generally regarded as one of the writers of conscience in our country, though your father is a prominent grassroots politician. Many were surprised to see you actively involved in the presidential campaign of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. At what stage did you decide to get involved in the Tinubu project?
Well, you know, I've been involved in active politics since 2002, even though I grew up in a very political sort of setting with my father in the PRP and Aminu Kano movement. So I've always been exposed to politics. I actively got involved in 2002 when President Muhammadu Buhari, then General Muhammadu Buhari, came into the political arena. So I was part of that movement up until 2011, where Providence brought me to the ACN, Action Congress of Nigeria. And that was really the first time that I was really exposed to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's politics. And, you know, I saw the effort that he made in trying all he could, and given the sort of contribution that he did to ensure that President Muhammadu Buhari got elected in 2015. Because you must remember, in 2003, 2007 and 2011, President Muhammadu Buhari did contest and unfortunately was not pronounced the winner of those elections. It was not until Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu came on board that he sort of gave us the bridge to the south that allowed us to record the victory that we did in 2015. So for me, I've been a great admirer of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and I'm very appreciative of the sort of contribution that he gave that saw the movement that I was part of come into government in 2015. So the minute that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu declared that he wanted to contest, I was quite interested, and I'm very, very excited and very appreciative to be part of his campaign team, and really, really excited to see him and see the way that he's going to govern, hopefully, by the grace of God, when he becomes president.
All right, interesting. So, as an active participant, how would you describe the contest so far?
I think the contest so far has been, I think generally for Nigerians, has been a very, very exciting one, because you can see that there's a lot of interest from even areas and quarters and demographics that ordinarily didn't really have much interest. So it's been very exciting from a Nigerian point of view. From a participant in the campaign itself, it's been rather rigorous, because going from one place to another, and you know, in politics, 24 hours is a very long time, and many, many things change. There's been a lot of challenges, and of course, being the ruling party, you know, you're put in a position where you have to defend so many things, and it's not been, I wouldn't say it's been very easy, but it's been quite pleasurable to be able to interact with Nigerians in the way that we have done, and be able to take the message and the vision that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has, and together with Kashim Shettima, has for Nigeria. It's been an exciting one, and I really do look forward to seeing how it will play out in the next 2 weeks.
Are you convinced that your candidate has got what it takes to win this presidential race?
Oh, I'm beyond convinced. I'm actually convinced that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu will be announced as winner on after February 25th. I don't think there's any other candidate that has put in the sort of work that he has done in terms of politics from the from the 1980s. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been very active in the political scene. He's the one person that has built human capacity beyond anyone else. Out of all the candidates, he's the one that has recorded the most he's been the most successful in terms of being an administrator, as he was in Lagos. And, he has shown a lot of interest in what will hopefully be in the interest of Nigeria. He's shown a lot of interest in contributing to Nigeria and trying to sort of progress Nigeria to a place that we all want it to be. And, he's come up with a very, very robust action plan of his vision of what he wants to be able to implement in Nigeria. And I think with all that put together, I do think Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has all it takes to not only win, but to be one of, if not the best president that Nigeria has ever had, hopefully.
So let's talk about the Northwest, where you're from. People say that is the battleground in the 2023 presidential election. Do you agree? One. And another, what are the dynamics that will play out in the Northwest? Did you get my question? All right, let me repeat that.
Well, I heard the first part of it when you, yeah, okay.
Talking about the Northwest, where you're from, people say that is the battleground in this 2023 presidential election. Do you agree with that narration? And what are the dynamics that will play out in the Northwest?
Definitely, I do think the Northwest has emerged as a battleground. It's not just in this election. I think in all the elections that have gone in the past, it's quite evident that the Northwest is the battleground. Of course, you look at the voting numbers that are in the Northwest, and of course, I'm from the Northwest. I'm from Katsina State, and I always say that the North generally may not be the most educated in terms of demography in Nigeria. We may not be the best traders, but when it comes to politics, the Northerners generally are very in tune. They're very savvy when it comes to politics. They understand the game of politics and how it is played. And so they really participate in a way that gives them that specific power in any election cycle to be able to more or less determine who's going to emerge as the winner. So definitely, the first part of your question, the Northwest is the battleground, has emerged as so. And I think what's going to play out in the Northwest is quite simple. It's, and again, just before I answer the second part of that question, because the Northwest is the battleground of this election, I think we can comfortably say that that would more or less eliminate the potential of Peter Obi and the Labour Party being successful in this election. I think they're going to make a good showing, but I think because they don't have the strength that is required in that particular region, I think it would be very difficult for them to be able to succeed. And then we're looking at four parties essentially, that the two main contenders, the ANPP, the APC and the PDP, and then you have the Labour Party, then you have the ANPP. Now you remove the Labour Party because it doesn't have the strength required in the Northwest. Now you look at the NNPP. Quite rightly, the NNPP has a very fantastic and very powerful head of their party. Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso is a very popular figure and a very distinguished northern political figure who is very much loved. But unfortunately for Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, he comes on a platform that just doesn't have the capital or the latitude to be able to record the victory in a way that is required during an election. You do need structure. And the NNPP is a new party that doesn't have that kind of structure that is required. So even though Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso is quite popular and he's from the northwestern region, it will be very difficult for the NNPP to get the kind of to be able to get the kind of support on the ground that is needed, because it just doesn't have the capital or the structure or the latitude to be able to get that victory. So we come down to APC and PDP. And essentially, these are the two parties that are really in contention, and even in the Northwest. Now, when we come down to the very variables on the ground, you have to take into consideration the power that APC has in the Northwest. We have a number of governors from the Northwestern region. I think it's only one state that we don't have a governor. And of course, all the governors, being a governor of a state, obviously you have a lot of power in terms of influence of the people within that specific domain. So the fact that APC has governors in the Northwest is a plus for APC that PDP doesn't have. Then again, we come back to the issue of structure again. And you have to understand, even though I know people say that, oh, Atiku is a northern candidate and Bola Tinubu isn't. Yes, rightly so. But even at that, I think this is one election that has to go down local. And you have to remember that on the day of elections, the day that the presidential election is going to take place is the same time that you have the senatorial election and the House of Reps election. And all the people that are going to campaign for those elections are going to do so campaigning for their principle, essentially for us in APC, that is Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. There is no person on the APC platform that is contesting for Senate or House of Reps that's going to go and start campaigning for Atiku because he's a northerner, and not for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu because they want to win the election for themselves. So when they go to campaign, they're not going to go to the villages where people are not really very educated and start saying, oh, for the presidency, go for this party because he's a northerner, and for my election, go for this party. That's not going to happen. They're not going to take that risk. So, even if there are issues in terms of maybe certain candidates have sentiments as to who ethnic and tribal sentiment. They're going to campaign for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu because they're campaigning for themselves, and that's where we talk about the structure. So I think in terms of the power that APC has in respect of the structure as regard to what I've just explained, I think APC has a very, very strong footing. And again, for us that have been campaigning for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Kashmir Shettima on the ground, especially in the Northwest, I'm very much involved in the Northwestern campaign, especially in Katsina State. And I tell you, selling the idea of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the easiest thing on earth because they already know him. For years, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has contributed to the lifestyle of the people there. Every time there's a death, there's a disaster, because he's a philanthropist by nature. So he has contributed to those communities. So when you go now and you talk to them about Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, they know who he is. And they know him to be a man who has helped their communities. They know him to be a man who has been a great philanthropist. And they know him to be a man who has built Lagos State, a state that each of our states in the Northwestern region sort of aspire to become. So it's very easy to sell him. So I can guarantee you one thing. In the next 15 days, as we go into this election, regardless of any challenges that we're going to have as a party and as a campaign, I am confident that the Northwest will deliver success to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the most decisive manner. And we wish to do so because we want him to have a success that will be completely undisputable after the election is announced. The results are announced.
Madam Hannatu, you're a young woman, so that makes it very important for me to ask you this. Are you convinced that the APC is doing enough to galvanize the support of young people in this election?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure I'm a young woman, but if you say I'm a young woman, I'll take that. Yeah, when it comes to the young people conversation, it's one that I really find quite interesting because what I find is when you talk to the media and they say young people when they refer to young people in this particular cycle of campaigning, I get the sense that they lump all the young people into one basket from the impression that they've gotten on the social media. Young people, there are young people all over Nigeria, and I would dare say that there are more young people in the northern part of the country than there are in the southern part of the country, because the population is higher in the north. So there are young people in the north who do not have access to the sort of medium that have been able to express their views in the way that has created an impression that all young people think one way as regards to this election. I go campaigning in all parts of the Northwest, especially in Katsina, and I don't campaign in the metropolis area. I go to the villages and I see young people all the time, and the young people there that we've been able to engage are extremely excited about the candidacy of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, because the young people want Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to bring the kind of innovation that he's been able to introduce in Lagos. They want it to be introduced in Nigeria so that it will be able to reflect in their states as well. So yes, I do think we've been able to engage the young people. It may not be the young people that the media has been able to have access to. There are young people all over the country. So I really do would like to urge the media especially to understand that there are young people all over the country. And just because there are a vociferous number of young people on the social media that have a voice, there are young people in other parts of the country that do not even have access to Twitter. They don't know what it is. And they also have the same right and the same voice. And these young people we've been able to engage and will be able to give, hopefully, to give their support to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And I'm very, very confident it is those young people that are going to return him as elected after February 25th.
Particular issue. The Labour Party presidential candidate, Peter Obi, is doing very well with the young people, milking their anger and desire for change. Where does the APC stand with regards to this very critical segment of the voting public?
Well, the Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has a great program for young people in the action plan. He talks about even involving young people in his cabinet. It's something that he's very passionate about. He talks about speaking to the banks and trying to encourage banks to give loans to young people. He has a very robust idea and program that he wants to implement for young people in terms of not only trying to build them up in businesses and agriculture, but also with their education. And so he has a lot of programs for young people. And yes, like I said, you said, yes, Peter Obi has has been able to engage young people, but it's only young people in one specific platform. It's only the young people that have access to social media, and the young people that have, they maybe in the metropolis that are able to access his message. But like I said, there are young people in all parts of the country. And there are a lot of young people in the northern parts of the country that have not been able to even understand what Peter Obi is saying because they don't know who he is. You go to a village in Katsina, you say Peter Obi, they do not know who you're talking about. And that is the God's honest truth. That is just the God's honest truth. And I think we can say this to high heavens, but I think that will only be settled after February 25th when the results return. And you find that a large majority of people in a certain segment of the country are not going to vote for the Labour Party because they do not know, there's no resonance between the Labour Party and them. And this really concerns me as a Nigerian citizen, because I think the narrative that has been put out there, especially with these polls that have been put out, the most ridiculous polls. I mean, to bring out a poll and to say that the Labour Party is going to win in the north, in the northwest, is absolutely preposterous. It is absolutely ridiculous. It really is. And I think every single one of us that are involved in this in this campaign from every party realizes that. I mean, I guess the spokespeople all have a job to do. You have to defend your position. But that's just the reality of it. But I tell you that the young people from my part of the country are going to come out and stand by Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And this narrative that has been created, when the results are announced and Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is announced as the winner, I don't want us to fall back on that particular narrative to say, oh, the polls said. But the polls are not scientific enough to completely reflect the reality on the ground.
Right, let's quickly touch some other topics making headlines. Governor El-Rufai has raised an alarm that the crisis triggered by the old Naira swap was the handiwork of fifth columnist in Aso, intent on seeing the APC lose power. Where do you stand on this matter, and is what is going on enough to make APC lose power at the center?
First of all, I would agree that there's an element of saboteuring or saboteur in this. I don't know. I wouldn't comment as to whether it's anybody in the villa. I don't know, because I think President Muhammadu Buhari was very sincere in this policy that he wanted to put in place. But I do believe that there is people that are fifth columnists, but I think it's more in the banking sector, so to speak, where you have bank service providers hoarding money. And obviously, I also think that this particular policy, good as it sounded, and as positive as it would have been for the economy, for security, and also to try to ensure that we have credibility in our election without vote buying. We want that too, because we want a decisive victory that will sort of convince Nigerians. So the issue of vote buying is something that we're not interested in. However, I think the implementation has been a problem, and apart from that, I think the people who came up with this policy did not really look at all the variables, and the issue of the internet service provider, whether they had the sort of strength and the bandwidth to withstand the kind of pressure, the overwhelming pressure that has happened. Because you can see what has happened in the last couple of weeks has been absolute Armageddon. It's been terribly awful for Nigerians. And of course, people think it's going to affect the APC, and it may do, because people will look at our campaign and say, oh, the government is putting unnecessary hardship on us, and so let's not vote for the candidate. But you know what? I think it's worked in the reversed way, because Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the only one of the candidates that's coming out and aligning himself with the plight of the Nigerian people. You have the other candidates that are politicizing it and saying, oh, let's continue, because they're only focused on the campaign. But Asiwaju is focused on the welfare of the Nigerian people, and he's the only one speaking out for the Nigerian people. Initially, you had Atiku Abubakar, who came out and urged the government to sort of extend the deadline, because it was difficult for Nigerians. But then they decided, PDP, to sort of politicize the whole situation.
Madam Hannatu, sadly we're out of time, but I must thank you for coming on Politics Tonight. I have been speaking with the Deputy Spokesperson of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, Hannatu Musawa, as we discuss APC People-Centered Campaign. It is indeed a pleasure speaking with you tonight. Thank you very much for coming on Politics Tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.